Throughout the 60s, missile defense was a really big topic. This concept of intercontinental ballistic missiles came about. These things could launch from anywhere in the world and come down basically with no warning and nuke another country. The Sentinel system was what the Army came up with and decided to implement in 1967. About a dozen sites in the United States would be composed of a giant radar system, and other sites fire nuclear missiles at the nuclear missiles and blast them out of the sky. It sounds crazy, and it was considered crazy at the time. North Andover was chosen as the site of Sentinel's first perimeter acquisition radar. It was nice and isolated, it was already mostly a state forest area, and it had nice access from Route 114. And this would have just been staring at the horizon, waiting for Russian or Chinese missiles to kind of appear out of nowhere, and at a moment's notice would have sent a signal to missile silos nearby. North Andover's counterpart site was planned to be in Camp Curtis Guild in Reading, and this is where the defensive nuclear missiles would have been stored in missile silos. It would have been like a permanent Army installation in North Andover. We would have had troops around town. There would have been barracks here. If this hadn't been canceled, this building probably would have been built within a year or two. It was considered an urgent matter.
North Andover was much more rural town. I counted, when we moved to town in 1958, there were about 11 farms in town. We were interested and wary, I guess. We had friends who were quite anxious. The People for Peace people were really not pleased with it at all. All the towns, cities seemed to think that they were going to get an atomic bomb. The word from the government was you should build bomb shelters. And so we had two neighbors who about that time built their houses, and in the basement there are bomb shelters. I can't remember that we thought nothing bad would happen, or there was not much you could do about it. Nobody really thought the whole thing through. I mean, so you're sitting in your bomb shelter, and you've got food for a few weeks, and presumably the air isn't so contaminated that you can't breathe it. But then, what if your neighbors come and want to share your food? Or what do you do about neighbors? That kind of thing. People didn't really, but nevertheless, they're protecting their own families. Building that road was controversial. The whole thing seemed like it would be incredibly disruptive. Out where all the farmers are, they're going to put this big hole in the ground. Some people worried we'd become a target.
They also had an informational meeting at the North Andover High School in the fall of 1968. Interestingly, there really wasn't a very big opposition to the work being done in North Andover at that time. Now, all of that changed when they had the informational meeting in Reading. Remember, this is where they were going to put actual missile silos, thousands of people turning out in a snowstorm, and coverage by local and national media, and some very heated discussions and opposition to the idea of putting missile defense in this area. You can imagine why people might be opposed to this. There's the safety issues, just the concept of having nukes stored near you, but also the idea that this could make the area a target. People started pulling politicians into this cause, and one of those politicians was Senator Kennedy. And this must have been quite effective, because within maybe like a month of Senator Kennedy becoming involved was the program put on hold and reevaluated by the new Nixon administration. And that essentially canceled the entire North Andover project, really less than a year after it started. There was this hope that this area could be turned into a state-of-the-art fancy recreation area by the state with some money from the federal government. And there were plans floated around for many years, but unfortunately nothing ever became of the plans. As soon as you leave the Army excavation site, it turns into beautiful New England forest land with rolling hills and hemlock trees and oak trees and wetlands and cedar swamps. It is actually really quite beautiful.